Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another valuable Power Retail webinar session powered by Online Retailer. Thank you to Online Retailer. Take notes later July, 22nd to 24th of July. Make sure you're up in Sydney for this famous industry event. Thank you all for joining us. So my name's Grant Arnott. I'm the publisher of Power Retail, and I'll be introducing our panelists for today very shortly. But before we run through some great stats on the state of technology worldwide, just some quick housekeeping. So mobile phones, make sure you turn them to silent. I can't ridicule you if it goes off because I won't hear it, but that's beside the point. You're going to want to pay attention because this is definitely going to be a great session. Bathrooms, you'll have to figure that out yourselves as well. You can take toilet breaks, I won't know, but definitely try and sit in for as much as you can of this. So the format of today's webinar, it's a Q&A focusing on the challenges of the retail technology landscape. We have two highly experienced and accomplished CIOs in the seat today, and we'll be introducing them shortly. So again, further to housekeeping, you can run through questions throughout the webinar. So in your little dialog box on the GoToWebinar platform, you can open up at any time for questions, and we'll put those to our panelists throughout the session, which should take up to 45 minutes today. So thanks for sitting in. All right, so let's look at what's happening in the world of technology, and specifically around some of the big, most talked about items at the moment. So augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, whatever you want, reality type of technology you want to call it. It's about to explode. It's already starting to grow significantly. This chart here from Statista gives you an indication of what analysts expect this market to do over the next 5 years. At the moment, it's been growing, doubling each year, and we're about to see a significant explosion on that with some forecasting 30 to 40% CAGR, compound annual growth rate, in the augmented reality space particularly. And why are we interested? Where does that apply for retail? What are some of the use cases? There are some, good use cases starting to emerge, and I know our panelists are going to talk to what their views are on AR, whether they've experimented, what examples they've seen. But just some retailers, some big names that are using this technology now include IKEA. We've got L'Oreal here. So L'Oreal invested in a company called Modiface, and you may have seen similar applications from Sephora and things like that. So in the cosmetics industry, it's a great opportunity to use augmented reality in stores and even online to basically showcase what particular cosmetics brands can look like on your face. So helps customers get a feel of their makeup through the front camera of their smartphone. And with apps like these, consumers can see the effects of different cosmetics products. And the idea resonates really well. It's more of a try before you buy without having to necessarily go into store or engage with a store person. So that's certainly one use case for augmented reality. IKEA is also another one using augmented reality via the smartphone to showcase how pieces of furniture can look in your home. So with the help of that app, shoppers can purchase the right furniture to match colours, style, overall look of their living spaces. And with IKEA Place, which is this app here, shoppers can view a piece of furniture against the background of their own homes. And according to the report that I have in front of me, the app gives shoppers 98% accuracy in their buying decision, resulting in higher customer satisfaction. So that app's been in market for about a year and a half now and is serving IKEA well. Another example here, Converse. So we all know that the shoe brand Converse, and this particular application of augmented reality lets users get a real-time experience of a product, the Converse Sampler app. So using this app, you can basically look down at your foot. So you can see the shoe he's got on the left. It's pretty ordinary looking, but you can see that the Converse that he's put on there just using the augmented reality app, so they can understand what their shoe would look like, take a snap of the shoe if they want, and share that photo with friends and family, get their opinion before they make the decision on whether to buy. So these are just some of the broad applications that you can see for augmented reality. And you're also seeing, the applications that we've had before with Myer and eBay did an experiment last year with virtual reality goggles. Again, I'm keen to put it to the panelists. I have a view on virtual reality goggles and things like that when it comes to shopping, but I'm also keen to hear from Brett and Shane what they think about those types of applications. So there's a broad range of augmented reality and virtual reality applications emerging from retail. How they apply from a practical sense, how they deliver value for both the customer and the retailer is something we really want to discuss today. The other big trend, I guess, that we're going to look at today, again, is IoT. So if you don't know what that stands for, we're talking about Internet of Things. This is another, impressive chart just showing the epic rise of the Internet of Things in terms of the size of the market. So again, a huge 40% compound annual growth rate right through from 2017 through to 2025, with billions of devices being connected. So worldwide spending, this is according to Forbes, worldwide technology spending on the Internet of Things is expected to reach $1.2 trillion in 2022, attaining a CAGR, a compound annual growth rate of 13.6% over the 2017 to 2022 forecast period. So a massive amount of money being spent in this space. And what we want to know is how the Internet of Things might apply to, again, retail brands in Australia. You listening today, what you need to be aware of. It's obviously a huge growth area. You can see this example here where you've got the tipping point of the Internet of Things in terms of adoption, where we're at in 2019. So expected to reach that tipping point of 18 to 20%. And then you'll see some explosive growth through the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, as shown in this graph here. This just shows you the number of devices in the market and how many are worldwide and how many are growing exponentially. So you can see that exponential forecast growth of Internet of Things devices or endpoints between 2018 and 2030. You're going to see more than 10 times the growth in the proliferation of Internet of, so basically connected devices or connected units, consumer devices, again, 10 times growth over the next 12 years. So that is massive, and something we should be talking about today. Can it apply to your business tomorrow? Yes, in some respects, but it's certainly something that you want to be looking at going forward, and starting to plan for that now. And again, we're really keen to hear what our technology experts have to say about this shortly. And another quote I saw today, by 2023, the average chief information officer will be responsible for more than 3 times the endpoints they managed in 2018. So in 5 years from now, their workload when it comes to managing endpoints, internet connected devices, is going to be 3 times what it is now. And we've got 2 CIOs joining us today, so I don't know what you think about that, guys. But first up, I want to introduce Brett Raven, the Chief Information Officer for Big Red Group. And also joining us is Shane Lenton, Chief Information Officer at Q Clothing and founder of Unified Commerce Consulting. So thanks, guys, for joining us today.
No worries. Good morning. Good morning.
So we've just talked and just shown the huge amount of global investment being poured into new retail tech, such as augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, Internet of Things, and all aimed at trying to amplify the retail experience. So how do your respective businesses view and utilize, if at all, some of these technologies?
Well, Grant, it's Shane. We'll talk probably more to, I suppose, how we, before we start talking about utilisation, more about how we're thinking about it.
Yep.
I think with a lot of this this tech that's, I mean, a fair bit of it's been around for a while. It's not going away. So, and you know, everyone's starting to consume more and more of these things in their daily lives. We used to talk about tech natives being a new, I suppose, challenge to businesses as they're entering the workforce. We've now got, you know, the Gen Zs and others that are, you know, they're born with a lot of this tech. So from our perspective, it's about observing that consumer behaviour, really understanding where the opportunities are, and looking at it from a retail funnel to understand how we can potentially capitalise on that opportunity, or even just provide an experience for those customers that they expect. We talk about, you know, the younger kids these days, whether it's the way that they consume their media, the way that they're consuming TV. It's important to be in front of those trends, or at least on top of them from a technology perspective, and it's certainly challenging. And I think it's very important to be mindful to make sure that what you're doing, not just doing it for the sake of it. It needs to make sense. It needs to be polished, and it needs to have return investment, whether that's providing, an amazing experience, or whether it's a transactional sort of return investment. It needs to make sense. I don't think we can go out there and just put some of this stuff in stores or online and think that, it's great to do it. I think it needs to make sense. It needs to be good. Otherwise, I think it can really damage the brands.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, some of the first incarnations of augmented reality, for example, were very above the line driven and were very kitschy. So they were just showing off gimmicky capabilities rather than solving a problem or creating an engagement level. So I think one of the key things that we're focusing on as well is not implementing something for the sake of technology or the sake of getting something out there into the market. It's more a case of what can the user benefit from it? How do we engage with them better? How do we build empathy and a further set of stickiness with the brand to make sure that we're not just throwing something out in the market that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so with all this technology on the market, I guess what you're saying there, Brett and Shane as well, is that it really starts and ends with the customer and what their experience should be, irrespective of technology. And so rather than looking at trying to find technology that fits to the customer, try and find what the customer needs, and then if applicable, fit some technology to that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also a matter of what devices they're using and what the leading tech vendors are doing from a hardware and a software perspective, because to try and do some of these things and build them from scratch is just particularly in retail, you just don't have those level of budgets, and also in most cases you don't have the expertise. So it's waiting until some of these technologies are mature enough and that they're actually feasible and that you can actually afford them. It's things like when we talk about voice and the massive adoption of voice at the moment, we've had to wait for the devices to be ready, and even if we talk about voice from we talk about smart speakers and things like that, and the huge adoption. We have, Siri and all of our smartphones, our cars, everything sort of voice enabled, but then we still struggle a little bit at the moment. Something I've been working on for a while is voice search on mobile devices. Now, you can definitely achieve it using an app. You can do it using a browser, but you're getting asked a question 20 times, basically every time you want to use search and use voice, because the iOS and Apple haven't decided yet that it's built in natively to their web browser. So sometimes it's a matter of waiting until these things are mature enough to provide a good customer experience, rather than just jamming it in there because you want to be a leader or you want to make some noise about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think first mover advantage isn't necessarily the right thing in this kind of market. The case of the voice, for example, people who have a bad experience with the voice will wait a while before they use it again. So just throwing an AR app out there isn't going to make any sense for a brand if they're just trying to hit the market first. And that, as Shane said, you can lose their interest pretty quickly. We're competing with so many different apps on people's devices these days that, it's easy for somebody to download something and try and interact with it, and they have a bad experience, they won't use that app again. And, difficulty coming back to trusting the brand will be, a mountain to climb, I would say.
And you mentioned a big important thing there as well with an app. Whilst, apps are hugely successful in the retail space, there's also a huge element of friction of getting people to download that app. Yeah. So for me, from a retail perspective, I like to do as much as we can to provide a great experience within a browser on a mobile device. I know that, like I say, there's huge benefits app. It's not something we're focused on at the moment, but will come at some point in time. But yeah, so it's always, whilst there are opportunities, quite often some of the friction or some of the challenges outweigh the opportunity or the benefit of the opportunity.
Yep. Okay. And so when it comes to the customers then, so I think what I'm reading from you guys is that they're less and less impressed by technology these days as well, where they're more interested in a real connection, not likely to be persuaded or impressed by some gimmicks like voice search. Haha, I can order my washing powder online. That's about a 5-minute window of entertainment and novelty value versus the broader engagement piece around what technology should be doing, but how you work it into the business, which is really creating that true customer connection.
Look, I mean, it definitely, I would agree there a bit, but I would also say that things are becoming the norm, you know, like the smart speakers and home assistants. There's massive penetration internationally. We're obviously a little bit slower here, but it's got to be a slick experience to really get that you know, everyday use and become, you know, more popular and become the norm. I mean, a lot of reports we look at now are saying by 2020, 50% of Google search will be voice. I haven't looked at the latest stats to see how that's tracking. I had read other things in the past where they said it had already changed, but I suppose when you localize that and bring it into a market, those stats can be quite different. But yeah, it's definitely got to provide a good experience. Yes, you can provide a bit of fun, but ultimately to be something that someone's going to use day in, day out, it needs to be very slick, it needs to be intuitive, and often that can be, at this stage, it can be very challenging to achieve that.
So in your respective businesses, let's talk about what you both do too, and in terms of how you approach. Not only just talk quickly, we've introduced you both, but we haven't really talked about what your business's specialties are, but also how you've utilised technology within your businesses in recent years to great effect.
Sure. So just a bit of background, the Big Red Group is about 2 years old, and it comprises of Red Balloon, which has been around for about 17, 18 years now, which is a gifting experiences business. We bought Adrenaline last year in November, which is a kind of book it now adrenaline experience type thing. So there's 2 different demographic groups there, and they will respond differently to technology as we put it in front of them. Now, from a VR perspective, we actually did an experiment 2 Christmases ago, so 2018 Christmas, where we had a pop-up shop in a Meyer Giftorium center down in Sydney. And in that was, one of the benefits of having a gifting business, especially during seasonality, is Red Balloon vouchers are very easy to buy at the last minute. So we love to take advantage of what we call last minute Larry. And we were hoping to capture that market as well in person in a retail environment. And the Giftorium seemed like the right place to do that. So we invested a bit of money and a bit of time with Samsung and brought forward a couple of interesting seats that we put in, sort of immersive seats with some speakers inside. And we got on board with them with their VR technology. Samsung Gear is the headgear that they had. So you'd insert a phone, and we had some videos that were made with some of our suppliers to have an immersive video driving a V8 car, or there was a bungee jumping one and one for hot air balloon rides and so on.
So a bit of 4D with the chair moving and blowing. And
a little bit, yeah. It didn't have the fans or anything like that, but it had the ability for you felt immersed in the environment. Now that was interesting, and we had people come and sit down and experience the VR, and it was a good plug for Samsung to get their gear into the market. And that was really one of the first better implementations of a mobile phone headset combination. But to be honest with you, it was not really, it was almost felt like an after effect. It felt like we were implementing VR for the sake of getting people to come to the booth. And it didn't really translate into for us. So it was one of those situations where I think it was good for the brand. People really enjoyed the experience, but it didn't translate into sales. And I think that's one of the things that both Shane and I continue to agree on here, is that if you're just doing something for the sake of technology, don't expect to have an outcome necessarily. The outcome may not be revenue. It could be brand halo effect. So you may do something really interesting in the market that engages people, and you may have revenue benefit from that down the track. We have yet to see that in this case. There are things that we're putting on the table right now for the business around more like that. So more content that we can create. This is a virtual an immersive experience for people, more at the social sharing side of things. So if we had a 360-degree video on Facebook, for example, of somebody doing a hot air balloon ride. That might be a different way of us exposing the content rather than us having a physical presence for it. And then we're also not responsible then for providing the hardware and the environment that is required to have that experience. So that's one of the ways that we've done it, and we're looking at doing more of that kind of stuff in the future.
And from my side of things, so for those that don't know Q, Q celebrated their 50th year last year. They're a women's fashion company with 3 brands, Q, Veronica Main and Dion Lee. They're the largest local manufacturer of fashion in the country, which is a pretty amazing story. Being 50 years young, you know, the business has some great heritage. I've been with the company for around 10 years, or just over 10 years, and what I've been lucky enough to do is really build the foundations from a technical perspective and I suppose user experience perspective over that period of time, and particularly the last 5 years. Obviously, you know, there's some hot topics we're talking today, you know, around the, you know, Internet of Things, the AI, the AR and the VR and, you know, extended reality, which are super exciting, but I'm always a big believer of getting the fundamentals right and having those foundations there. From my perspective, in the market a little bit, I see some, you know, some businesses going to market with some really, you know, some cool stuff, cutting edge, that's a bit of a flash in the pan, doesn't really stay around for a long time. And for me, I look at it and think, well, if they'd only sort of invested that time and effort into getting the fundamentals of their business and their, you know, their inventory, their single view of customer, and those components right, they'd be in a far better position. I think it's important for businesses to really get those foundations right and then have the fun and then really celebrate those things. From a, I suppose, a tech perspective, and when we talk about some of these new, well, they're not that new now, but some of these emerging technologies, from an AI perspective, we use AI quite a bit across our marketing automation, recommendations, whether it's the time we send an email, whether it's, you know, what communication we send, personalised recommendations. We've also, it must have been last year, we launched image search on our website for anyone visiting via a mobile device. It's been a great tool. That's where, you know, you can take a photo of a person or a product, and you can look that product or look on our website, upload that image and look for something that's similar. And where that works well is obviously Shopwell Instagram's been a, you know, really big success in the fashion space, and I'm sure as well across a lot of categories. But often our customers that are, you know, that are browsing or you know, viewing different product in Instagram, they're looking at influencers and things like that, and it's a little bit still protracted on how they can actually then, whether there's a link in the bio or whether they've got to then go to the retailer's site and try and find the product. Just being able to take a screenshot and upload that to our website into the search function. It's a pretty smooth experience there to find similar product from us, and a lot of other retailers have been, you know, starting to use that same technology, and particularly where you've got marketplaces and things like that, it can really sort of benefit. Outside of that, we've been looking very closely. I mentioned voice before. I do have voice working. We haven't rolled it out because, as I mentioned previously, from a usability perspective, it's just not a great experience where you're trying to say to someone use voice, but they've got to touch the screen a couple of times each time. Now that's resolved when you've got an app. You know, ask the question once and it's done, but unfortunately at this point in time, it's not there. But things are changing. If we look at augmented reality as an example, and the way that, you know, a lot of the mobile devices now natively are facilitating these solutions. You look at, you know, the use of the USDZ files. If you Google that and even look at ARKit, there's another thing to Google. Maybe Grant I'll share a link after this, and there's some good examples there. It's becoming easier now, I think, for retailers as some of these vendors, you know, the likes of Apple and Samsung and others, introduce this technology as native within the devices. I think it's going to be a real game changer. And the key is there, you know, if we talk about virtual reality as an example, contextual payments. I know we'll talk about payments in a minute, but it's all about providing the ability for someone, from my perspective, to be able to transact and have a good experience for them when they are using this technology in a retail environment. An example I saw, it was a good probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was in the UK. I visited Selfridges, great retail experience for the most part. We went to the change rooms and they had spent big dollars at the time, and it was a coffee table style. I think it was a Microsoft product where they built these screens into the top of the table, and it was all to do with being a jeans bar and everything like that. And you could sort of slide things around. It was that interactive touch screen, that sort of CSI type, screen experience.
I think that's Microsoft Surface. That was what the original thing was.
The original one, yeah, and which was fantastic. But literally, it was sitting in a change room, and then I walked across. Struggled to find support and help on products we're looking for, and then we walk across the road with young kids to Hanley's and talk about a retail experience. You had real people there that really knew their craft. They were showcasing the product, and to me, that's a good example of sometimes introducing the tech and not providing a great personalised or pointed experience, as opposed to providing a real world, real people interactive experience. I think that's sometimes where we miss the the objective there a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and look, it's a constant challenge, and thanks for that, Shane. I know exactly what you're talking about, and we've seen, I guess, things like virtual dressing rooms, which I guess I've been doing this for 10 years now, and we were talking a lot about those maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Have they really taken off? No. Do they add any value? Not really. Sorry to those who may be using them, but it hasn't really penetrated the mainstream, at least in this country. And yeah, experiences like what you're talking about there are sometimes no substitute for the traditional human intelligence interaction and human experience, where technology is not really adding any great value of any significance. You touched on personalization and also payments, but just personalization, it's a major topic for retail marketers currently. So how do you both implement personalization in your businesses, and what have been the payoffs on those? And also, just before you answer that too, just a reminder to everyone listening that you're welcome to ask questions. We will like to open it up to questions from our audience as well that I'd like to pitch to the guys today. But if you can just answer that question, personalization.
Yeah, so look, personalization is a big thing for us at Q. It's something we've been working on for quite some time, and we're sort of at a point now where we can really start to, I suppose, capitalize on it. So for us, it's, it varies different levels. It's about knowing, knowing that CRM data, having that single view of customer, using machine learning and AI, having that behavioral data where they may not have transacted. It's providing a personalized experience on a website through, time of day when you do communicate with them, whether it be email or otherwise. And it's about, for us, it's about partnering with a good marketing automation platform, a good tool and platform on site. Recently, I've started doing some work in an official capacity with Insider, and we're currently running a pilot at Q. And I mean, we saw within 2 weeks of just asking the question without doing anything with it yet, just getting permission, we saw about 5,000 opt-ins for people to accept browser notifications, which I think is an area that's a bit untapped. It's like Facebook, when they first started allowing you to do, paid ads, and there was a really good ROI at that point in time. It's something I think now being able to personalise people, abandoned carts, maybe price changes. It's about knowing someone's a member and they've got a 10% off without them signing in. It's putting the right product in front of the customer at the right time. And I think the pendulum's starting to shift a little bit, where people used to feel a bit uncomfortable about being followed around the internet, or about going to a site saying, hey, I've looked at that before, or you know, I've suddenly been targeted with this flight that I, you know, had a look at. Whereas now it's almost an expectation. Don't serve me content that I'm not interested in, or that I haven't shown some interest. You ask me for a little bit of information. Now there's an expectation that you'll provide a personalised experience for me. And from my perspective, I think that, you know, the word or focus for me in the next year or so is really that hyper personalisation, and trying to have those one-to-one relationships or conversations with the customers to make it relevant. And to everyone's time poor, everyone gets frustrated when they've got to look for something, or, you know, they can't find what they want quickly. So yeah, that's a big focus for us at Q.
For our brands, it's interesting. We have a different problem in Red Balloon in that personalization doesn't necessarily translate again to new sales. If you think about it, as a gifting business, the person who's doing the purchasing is not necessarily the person that's going to be receiving that item. So using AI is on the site, especially for product recommendations, can be a bit of a challenge for us, because we don't necessarily, if you go shopping 4 or 5 times a year in Red Balloon, you're buying a Mother's Day gift, a Father's Day gift, and so on, and the recipient varies depending on the time of year. So it's an ongoing challenge for us to try and figure out what data can we pull in that is second party within the system to figure out what we should be promoting to you, maybe seasonality wise or past purchases. But it does create a different problem for us. And we've, you know, because of a re-platform that we did last year, we kind of took an opportunity to clear the table and restart our personalization journey. We do personalization at the top of funnel through the Albert AI tool that we use for online ads. So that's a different proposition that we've got. And we're also very much embedded into a customer 360 implementation at the moment. We use Salesforce for our CRM and service desk and what have you. That ties into our website now, ties into Marketing Cloud. So as Shane said, you know, it's important to partner with the right kind of you know, automated marketing process. We have 2 things coming up in the near future. The push notifications to browser definitely is something that's on our near horizon. I think it's one of those sleeping giants that we can all take advantage of, a bit of a Trojan horse. And if you're not using that on your website now, I strongly recommend that you have a look at that. And believe it or not, SMS still has some benefit. I was talking to a few people at the conference I was at last week, and they were quite surprised at the benefit they were getting from doing, you know, very occasional one-off promotions to VIPs, for example, in SMS. And that's really, it sounds simple, right? But it's really creating that one-to-one conversation again that we keep talking about in the industry.
And it's expensive, it's intrusive, so you've got to make sure that they're at the right stage of that journey, and that comes down to knowing your data.
Exactly, and I think if we don't take the same approach with push notifications, people will start abusing that, and eventually people will just ignore those as well. So there's probably a bit of a gold rush time as well, if you think about it, Shane, that now people aren't really used to having browser notifications doing push. This is going to be a bit novel for people as well. So getting in early is probably a good thing for all of us to do.
And particularly around, I mean, where sometimes it feels like a bit of a race to the bottom with discounting. So I think it's important to be, you know, with this personalization, ideally we provide the right product in front of the customer at the right time that doesn't necessarily need to be on discount.
Exactly,
you know, there's an opportunity for some margin protection there, and really drive that desire and hit the customer at the right time. Brett touched before about having that sort of unified view, that, you know, single view across platforms, you know, whether it be customer service, marketing, website, and for us in store. It can't be underestimated. I mean, the personalization can come down to a simple thing as someone calling your service desk or your customer care team in this instance, and, you know, being known, if their number's recognised, know who they are, know what their shopping history is, provide a personalised shopping experience for them. It could be in store. Some of the stuff we're doing now is injecting some of the AI recommendations into upselling at store level. So our teams in store can look up an order number that they've just picked for a click and collect. They've packed it, marked it as ready. Not only are we sort of, you know, providing recommendations for the customer from a digital sense on, you know, some of those notifications and communications we have, but we're also providing those tools in store so that our teams can get prepared They can look up an order. They can see what's what's been recommended from an AI perspective for that customer, so they can get those products ready. And that's a combination of the CRM data, knowing the customer, knowing what inventory they have available at store in that particular store at a filter level, and also being able to shop the whole, the endless aisle, that store-to-door piece. Even if they don't have it in store, there's an opportunity for them to upsell to the customers. So I think it's gone to the days of people being annoyed by, you probably, or being a bit uncomfortable with you knowing too much about them.
Yep.
As long as everything's above board, I think it's swung back the other way. People want that personalised experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think experience is the right word. I think the note on that is, people are, as an experiences business, we can see this rise in the experience economy. We've talked about this a few times over the past months, but people are demanding to have that experience be seamless and value add all the way through. So, personalization is going to bridge that gap, making sure that we give somebody exactly what they want and when they want it. And as Shane said, that doesn't necessarily mean a discount, it just means relevance. It also allows us to start building a conversation with people and build empathy, and then that creates trust within the brand. So if people come to our site and they know that we know them, then we can have that honest conversation with them about what the next step is. And we can get feedback from them as well and take that on board. So, personalization is a big journey, I think, for every company. There's so many different options out there. The key recommendation, I guess you're hearing from both of us, is make sure you've got your data sorted, because that's the thing that will drive those conversations for you.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Brett. You really bring it back to, both of you are really bringing it back to the fundamentals there of getting the data right to enable the right communications and conversations and experience with your customers. So to that end, we've talked about AI, we've talked about personalization, we've talked about augmented reality, and we spoke a little earlier about the Internet of Things, but just we've got to wrap up soon, but just what elements of retail and marketing technology do you feel retailers should really be prioritizing in light of your experiences?
Sure, I think there's a buzzword going around now, Customer 360. That's the big thing that everybody's talking about, and some organizations are offering branded Customer 360 products. Having that ability to have the touch points all wrapped up into a single record or a single view is really important. So if you look at having a data warehouse that aggregates all of your information from your transactional system, from your CRM, from your reviews platform, from any kind of data source that you've got, that can give you a really good solid 360 view. That then ties into all the marketing capabilities that you have, and it also ties into your customer service. So if somebody rings up, they don't want to jump through 3 or 4 different people to get the service that they need and deserve. So having a really good customer service experience will, with the availability to see that data, will allow you to provide an exceptional service at that point. So really it comes down to CRM, marketing, email campaign capability, and transactional data.
And then absolutely that CRM data, as well as and just throwing in that behavioural data as well, knowing how they're interacting with whether it be your website or your social ads, really, and understanding when they got to your site, how they got there is important as well. But it does come down to that sort of unified view of the customer and of the data across all your touch points.
And I guess, Grant, the other point to make is coming back to the AR and VR piece. Imagine how much data you're going to be able to gather from somebody having experience in AR and VR with the components that you're using. So now we get the transactional type, points of information. So we get where they've clicked, where they've browsed, how long they've spent time on things, what they've added to wish list, what they put in their shopping.
You look at the L'Oreal example there, Brett, and that's a great case for understanding people's cosmetics preferences from interacting with a tool like that. So go on.
What I'm saying basically is we've got all these kind of touch points that are very transactional at the moment, but imagine being able to see how people interact directly with what they interact with. So L'Oreal is a great example. Somebody could spend half an hour, trying on different kinds of makeup looks and what have you, and from that we'll gather a lot more data about how that person looks at the product that they're looking at and how they behave and how they shop, and it's going to create a whole different set of data that we need to look at. That will be massive amount of data, by the way. Like the data points coming out of a stream like that will be huge,
Right.
which creates a downstream challenge. So how do we analyze that data? How do we report on it? How do we then leverage it going forward? And to be honest with you, the only thing I think that would make that successful would be AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a few questions from the audience just before we wrap up. So how can a retailer define whether new AR technology is gimmicky or worth the investment? And is there automatic risk to the brand when they invest in this technology?
So look, I think best thing to do, as Shane said, there are some barriers of entry. It's not cheap to get involved in this space, but there are kits involved that you could start with. What I would suggest is having a look at the market for people who may have done something similar and get an idea of how successful or how engaging that might be. And then find a way to test it. So go to your market, go to some friendlies, do a soft launch, really feel out in the market how you feel it's going to be responded to. And some of the best people to test this on will be younger kids. Is it interesting? Is it engaging? Will they pick it up and use it again? Anything that is used once and thrown away, I think, is brand damage. Anything that has a return visit is something that you can leverage further off of. So it's really a test it and see, I think, but try and learn from other people's mistakes if you can.
Yeah, and look, I'd agree for sure. There's great opportunity to be a fast follower here. With AR as an example, I mean, it's getting better. Have a look, research the market. That's what I do. I really do. I look at whether it's download an app, whether it's have a look at some tech or get something built internally to have a look at. It's finding the right partners as well. I think it's important to find those right partners there. And at the end of the day, look at it yourself. If it's not really exciting, just because it's AR or just because it's VR or even AI for that matter. But if we just talk, if we talk about the, AR and VR and the extended reality, have a look at it. If it looks clunky, or if it doesn't look on brand, chances are it's not. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it for the sake of it. And sometimes it's worth waiting. As I mentioned now, with some of these devices, it being native functionality or native, integration, it's starting to give you the ability to look a lot better. Over the years, we've seen some bad examples, and now we're seeing some really good examples. It may be that you've got your magic mirrors, and it's more of a sort of interactive screen rather than trying on items. It may be that you're requesting new items. It may be visualizing rather than standing in front of a big screen and trying things on. We all know it. Fashion is an example. The idea is to make someone feel great. Unfortunately, there's a lot of test cases out there of businesses doing this, and whilst it's a bit of fun, it gets away from the fundamentals of why the brand exists or what the fashion experience is about. So yeah, I'd say just do the research, look for some brands, find out maybe the good examples, find out, usually with a bit of digging, you can work out who those partners are that are doing, providing these solutions for them, and then approach them and work through it.
Great. Look, just time for two quick questions. So one for you, Shane, from Lauren. What CRM platform does Q use?
Okay, from a marketing automation platform, we're using Amasis, and that ties in quite tightly with our sort of loyalty / CRM platform, which is also our POS and retail management, which is Triquestra, and Infinity is the product. So Triquestra being the company and Infinity. And then off the back of that, we're also, as I mentioned just before, we're sort of piloting and having a good look at Insider at the moment as well. So it's a combination of having this data and using some best of breed solutions that utilize this unified view of the customer.
And Brett, you're on Salesforce. I think I heard you saying earlier.
Yeah, that's right. We've drank most of the Salesforce Kool-Aid by this point. So marketing, cloud, sales, and service, and that all ties in. And there's another product called Social Studio that we have as well.
And last one from Ben, for both of you, I guess. What's the best conversion tool? So I'm assuming conversion rate optimization tool that you've used.
Oof, that's a good question. I think CRO is a dark art in many ways, just like SEO is. You know, a lot of the time has been test and learn for us, really.
That's yeah, for us.
So there's no magic bullet. Right?
We're very much test and learn. I know there's some great products out there. Some of them have been, you know, cost prohibitive for us. So we will be, I mean, we do a lot of A&B testing through our marketing automation and things like that come intuitively out of those platforms. And then outside of that, it's a lot of test and learn. But yeah, so we've got that sort of marketing automation or on-site recommendation, all the rest, which are running A&B testing and optimization off the back of that. And then throughout the site and other areas for us, like I said, there's great platforms out there, but for us, it's a lot of test and learn.
I would suggest one thing, you know, outside of the tool set is to focus on two key things in your business. One is page load speed, making sure that you obsess over how fast your website can go. And there's lots of things that you can do for that. And the other one is just to make sure you keep optimizing your checkout process.
Absolutely.
That's the key thing, right?
I can't say that enough. I mean, there was a few years ago, I think it was 2 years ago at one of these events. I mean, we're talking about Online Retailer, and there's one of these events I was at literally 2 years ago, and there's a big focus on mobile. I spent a couple of hours at that event just outside talking to my team because it was sort of push front of mind. And literally within a 6-month period, we made most of the changes within 8 weeks. But within 6 months, we bridged the gap. Previously, our mobile conversion rate was sitting at 42%. Within 6 months, we had that sitting, closer to 60%, and it really bridged that gap where we had traffic was at 60, 62%, conversions was at 40, 42 on mobile, and then by that, and now we look at it where we might see traffic upwards or around that 70, and we're seeing conversion rate by device can be over that 60% mark. So it's really, I think, looking at your analytics, looking at the opportunities, understanding where the bottlenecks are, and just making it easy. It's contextual payments a massive thing for me. I mean, there's optimization, there's search, make it easy for people to find things, improve that customer journey, whether it be in store and the experience in store, or whether it be online, and then providing, I mean, we sort of briefly touched on it, providing the payment options that those customers want, whether it's an international customer, whether it's a digital wallet, whether it's Apple Pay, both in store and on your website, whether it's buy now, pay later. Provide, just from that optimization perspective, I think it's constantly test and learn and review the data and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, Shane, when you said you've got a 60% conversion rate on mobile, is that what you said?
Sorry, with percentage. That's pretty amazing. We've got a pretty good mobile site. Rev by device. So
yes,
now,
right. But the point being, after you made the change, it went up significantly.
Optimize, and we really bridged that gap, which gave us a massive uplift in overall revenue.
Fantastic. Look, we're unfortunately out of time for questions, and we could continue on touching on the various technology subjects all day. But those who didn't get their questions answered, I'll follow up with the team afterwards and make sure you get those. But in terms of a technology marketplace, there's none bigger in Australia. When you are listening to both Brett and Shane talking about where to find, where to discover the right technologies, this is the place you want to be. 24th to 25th of July. I apologise earlier, I think I stuffed up the dates there, but 24th to 25th of July at the International Convention Centre in Sydney. OnlineRetailer.com. It is most definitely Australia's biggest marketplace for e-commerce technology vendors. A fantastic 2-day event. I know Brett, Shane, and hundreds of others will be on site, and a fantastic range of technology vendors and demos and partners and solution providers for you to talk to, as well as the fantastic conference. It's been running since 2009, so make sure you go along and have a look and register at OnlineRetailer.com. So thanks everyone for joining us today. There has been a video of the event or the webinar recorded for those who may have missed any of it, and we'll circulate that around as well. Thank you very much to our panelists today, Brett and Shane, for your time. And
no worries, thank you.
I appreciate that, guys, and we'll talk again soon. And thanks to everyone for attending today. That's a wrap.